I'm going to call the joint City of Groton, Town of Groton Special Committee of the Whole meeting for Monday, June 11, 2018 to order. Kirkpatrick, will you please call the roll?
Present are Mayor Keith Hedrick, Deputy Mayor Lawrence Garish, Councilors Jamal Beckford, Stephen Sheffield, Guinevere Depot, Rashard Carter, Clerk Deborah Patrick, excused as Councilor Jill Rusk. For the Town of Groton, we have Mayor Patrice Granatowski, Councilor Conrad Heed, Councilor Juliet Parker, Councilor Leanne Aubrey, Rita Schmidt, Andre Baumgardner, John Atwood, is that correct? David, I'm sorry, Atwater. I'm sorry, I wrote Atwater. Rachel Franco and Joseph Sabiri.
And for the record, we also have the town manager, John Burke.
John Burke, I'm sorry.
I want to thank everyone for coming out. This is our second quarterly joint meeting, and we will continue to do this in the future, alternating venues. So thank you for coming out. The items on the agenda, the first one is tax incremental financing. On the city side, the City of Groton TIF policy is at the attorney review. It's similar to the town's TIF policy. And then once the review is complete, Camoin will make corrections and get it out to the TIF advisory committee for final review. And then once that's complete, the TIF policy will be submitted to the city council for approval, excuse me, and then to the town council for acceptance. Now the reason that there's a dual review is due to the dual tax, the city tax and the town tax in the City of Groton. And that's for the funding of the TIF projects. And that's why our TIF policy and in the future, the TIF master plans will be approved at the city level, but reviewed and accepted by the town council. The local TIF districts on Thames Street in 5 corners, we have a map that we've generated. It's been approved by the City Economic Development Commission and the TIF Advisory Committee. These will be discussed with the City Council at the Committee of the Whole on 6/25 later this month. Is there any other discussion on tax incremental financing?
Just to mention, the town is working on the master plans for the Center Groton 117-184 intersection, as well as the Route 1, so that's underway. We're just beginning that master plan process, which will happen next for your 2 sections. So ours is coming along.
Right. So the city is I wouldn't say lagging, but it started our process a little bit later than the town did. So we're following in your footsteps, so to speak. Councilor Superior.
Would you refresh my memory a little bit, sir? Does the TIF zone in Groton, in the city, Joseph Perry speaking, does the TIF zone in the City of Groton include the area that's now the south yard of Electric Boat?
No. If you look at the way that it's drawn when it encompasses Thames Street, we start at Bridge Street and we come down and around and we encompass Thames Street all the way to the end, just on the other, excuse me, just on the other side of Garbo Lobster down to the end of that street. But it does not encompass any parts of the yard because the yard is in an enterprise zone and you can't have dual uses. You can't use the enterprise zone and the tax incremental financing zone at the same time. So that's why we've excluded that area specifically. Did that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other question? Councilor Carter.
On the town side, when you refer to Route 1, are you returning to the downtown Groton?
Yes,
Like
yes,
Yeah.
and we're still refining exactly how far along there it would be. We have a general boundary right now, but yeah, right through the downtown.
Yeah.
Because when you get into the master plan, and actually the zone and then the master plan, you're down to individual parcels that you are including within the TIF boundary. And all that, how that comes into play is that goes into the grant, we get the number from the grant list, and that helps define where the boundary is, but there's also a limitation of 10% of TIF financing in overall compared to the grant list.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons we have to go down to the parcel level. City and town both are doing it.
Okay, just
Sorry.
sorry. To just add, that can be amended at any time. You have to start somewhere, and if there's a new project outside of that nearby, we can put parcels in and out and change it over time.
Right.
So,
Any other questions or comments on tax increment financing? Okay, we'll move to item 2, highway analysis. Excuse me. These will just pass these around.
I'm not taking over there. Is enough to take an extra for business.
Yes. Thank you. The city met with Julia Novak on 5/16 of this year. It was the initial introduction to discuss the process and to start the dialogue. We're currently collecting information for the initial data request, which is what I'm passing around. And the next meeting with Novak is 7/2/2018, followed later that afternoon by a joint meeting with the city, town, and Novak. So they have requested this information from both the city and the town. They've interviewed some people, and one of the things that we're looking at now is to try to come up with
the benchmark item.
benchmark items and how we're going to measure the city and town. That was one of the concerns that came up from the Department of Transportation during the arbitration.
Can I ask a question? So
Yeah,
in coming up with the benchmarks, this is an ongoing conversation between the mayor, the manager, and both public works directors?
Yes, yeah.
Yes. That was our team that we put together.
Right, so there's, when we talk about the line items, we're going to be talking apples and apples, right?
Well,
'Cause I know
that's
that there's been a concern in the past.
absolutely, that is one of the things that we're trying to make sure that everybody is in agreement with is what are the benchmarks that we're going to look at to evaluate both city and town. And my push on this and hope on this is that we're looking for best practices and ways to identify, are we okay, right? Not so much to use this in a punitive way, because my personal opinion is I think that what we may find is that what is good for the city is good for the city, and what is good for the town is good for the town, and maybe not necessarily one needs to be doing everything that the other one's doing, depending on the makeup of the roads, the infrastructure supporting the roads, such as stormwater drains and things like that. But that will all come out in the wash when this evaluation is done. John, is there anything else you want to add?
I think you hit it well. But that's the linchpin, finding that benchmark item. We need to have that soon before we move on to other parts of the study.
I'm sorry, Councilor Sheffield.
Yes, will sidewalks also be discussed as far as the inventory? Is that part of that road connection as far as?
Well,
You know.
when we had our meeting with Julia, one of the things that we discussed is something that came out of the last arbitration was trying to identify what is considered part of this and from boundary to boundary. So property line to property line, because basically if you look at the center line road and you go out X amount of feet, that's what the city or town owns as the roadway, and that includes sidewalks. One of the things that we've looked at in the past is when we talk about sidewalks and other things, we agree that the city does things that roads and highways should be doing, and that the town does things that roads and highways should be doing. What we did not do, and we did not go this far, was how often are we doing it? How many times are you cleaning the roads? How many times are you cleaning your stormwater drains? How many times, how much time does it take you to do 10 square yards of sidewalk? How much time does it take you to clean or rebuild a stormwater drain? Those kind of things. And we're hoping that some of those benchmarks will come out of this study. Conrad, or Councilor Heath, sorry.
Who came up with the list of?
This came from the contractor. This is the information that they're asking for to help them in determination of this. Mayor Vanatuski, excuse me.
Thank you. One of the things that I think is important to include, and I'm not sure if it's already been considered or incorporated into this somehow, the state of Connecticut has categorization of types of roads, everything from interstates to collector roads to feeder roads to arterial, that kind of categorization. I think it's important that that be noted in all of this.
Sure.
Because some of the main roads in town are not town or city roads, they're state roads. So I think that needs to be kept in mind as well.
And we did mention that to the consultant. Keith and I have talked about, the mayor and I have talked about it before, and it has been passed on.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on highway analysis?
Is there,
Hold on.
I'm sorry.
Councilor Bumgar?
the floor,
Nope, you
Counselor? No, rock, paper, scissors? I'm only kidding. So on the, I know that Groton Utilities perform some functions that, say, the Groton Town Public Works performs, you know, say, for example, streetlights. So maintaining streetlights, that would be a function of Groton Utilities, whereas Groton Public Works would not. How would you sort of distinguish, I guess, services that are performed by, say, the Groton Town Public Works and Groton City Public Works versus maybe some functions
Sure.
the utility does?
Understand. Well, one, we're trying to keep the utility out of this, and we're trying to compare roads and highways function to roads and highways function. Are we looking? We're not looking at lights,
No.
right? So street lights was not part of this directive. So let me answer street lights that we're not looking at. Let me answer your broader question in that we want to ensure that we're comparing the same workforce, meaning roads and highways workforce or roads and highways workforce. And that's what we're trying to do. And we've talked to Julia about that.
So it'll be exclusively just highway operations within Public Works?
Absolutely. And to pull on that thread a little further, in the city, the same guys that work highway also work sanitation, but we're not doing anything with sanitation. And the way that we keep records down to the 15-minute increment, and specifically for what their work task is, so we can differentiate down to the 15-minute level of what they've done for what task. Mm-hmm. And so we're only focusing on roads and highways tasks. Do we have Councilor Aubrey?
Do we have some timelines on this? Like when this report has to be in and then next step with the group?
I think the estimate was about 4 months, I believe, somewhere close to that. I think that the hope was about 4 months.
To complete this?
That was the hope.
Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised to see it go to 6, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think I told somebody 6 months, but yeah, I think it's 4 to 6
Okay.
months on it. What we are trying to do is to get this resolved before we get into the next budget cycle.
Good idea.
That's what we're trying to do. Any other questions or Councilor Franco? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Just wanna make sure you saw it.
So the results of this, are we going to come to an agreement with the results of how we're going to fund roads? I mean, has anything been discussed prior to the study? Like, if they come out with a result, we're going to agree to it?
We haven't seen the results.
I know, but
see what you're saying.
pre-agree to it, like whatever the results are, we're going to go with what they say. Do you know what I mean?
see what you're
I know exactly
Yes.
what you're trying to
Yes.
say. I'm trying to figure out how I want to answer that
question.
question. You're probably never going to get me to pre-agree to something that I don't know the answer to. Right? Now, I will say we've entered into this, both city and town, in good faith, and we are looking for efficiencies. And we're going to need to look at what the study says and then evaluate what the impacts of that are. Impacts of the study are, and then go from there.
Okay.
But I don't intend to blow this up just to blow it up. I mean, if we're not, one of the things that the town manager and I spent several of our meetings with before we even got into here was, do we want to do this, and what do we expect to come out of this? And what we don't want, and I'll speak for me, but what we don't want, what I don't want to see is another report that goes on a shelf, because we tend to study things and put things on a shelf. One of the challenges to this that I am sensitive to is the amount of emotion that has been involved in this over the years because of the accusations that have been made back and forth. And I'm trying to try to find out, what is reasonable and what is a good measure, and then go from there. I don't know if that answers your question. It doesn't answer your question directly, although, like I said before, if you're asking me to agree to something, to pre-agree to something that I don't know the outcome of, I'm not going to do that.
Okay, okay. Just to mention also, they're also going to compare us to outside towns and outside cities to see how we're doing, and I'm hoping we'll find some things that maybe we could do better as a town that other towns are doing or not doing, and city the same thing, and so hopefully some new fresh ideas will come out of it, as well as some ideas of how we can work together generally. So.
Right. Councilor Depot?
Not to belabor the point, 4 to 6 months from when? From when we get them this
Basically
information?
from once the kickoff was. Yeah, basically. From right about now, yeah. We've been passing them the information, so it starts about right now.
Okay.
Councilor Carter?
I think you already answered this. I'm pretty sure you did. This includes it doesn't include sidewalks, or it does include sidewalks? The highways.
Yes, because
Yes.
it's between the property lines. Yeah.
It's between the property lines, so it does include sidewalk maintenance.
Okay. All right.
And there are some challenges there because of the different materials that are sometimes used.
And that's what I was gonna say, because the way. Can I go?
Go ahead, please.
Because the way, not to shoot down the town or anything, but the way that the city does things is different than the town does things, as far as the materials that they use.
Right.
Where when you're using concrete and then kind of just throwing a Band-Aid on certain sections of town, like Quonic Bridge, So I think that has to play, a toll.
Well, one of the things we're looking at is that the makeup of the sidewalks, when you're talking concrete, you're talking concrete. The challenge that we have is that if you go to some of the town streets, the sidewalk comes right up to the street, just like it does in the city. But there are other streets in the town where the sidewalk has a snow shelf. So the sidewalk, there's a grassy section that is a buffer, if you will. So the sidewalk gets a little less exposure to the elements and the salt, those kind of things. And another issue is that in the city, we use concrete 100%.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And in the town, they have concrete sidewalks, but they also have
some
bituminous.
portions of the town, not all portions.
Say again?
Some portions of the town, not all
Yep,
portions.
some
That's my
portions
point.
of the town have concrete, and they also have asphalt and bituminous material that are there. And that'll all be evaluated. Hopefully that one of the reasons that we want to hire an independent contractor is to try to pull the subjectivity out of this and give us an objective look. And the other reason that we both funded this is because there's a perception that whoever funds it owns the report and typically steers it. This way, hopefully there's equal skin in the game, and we're both invested in this. And I've worked very hard with town manager John Burt, and Tim Ummers has worked with Gary And Ron has worked with Chris Lund, Ron Uhas, the finance director, in order to come up with who we think is the right contractor for this, and then to provide the information for the study. And we'll see how it comes out. Any, Councilor Sheffield?
The cost of the study, do we know?
I'm blanking on it. Was it around 50 to 60? I'm trying to think. It was somewhere
I'm
between
gonna say
50
it
and
was-
60, but I forget offhand.
I think it's,
30 each?
it was
30, 35
30 or
each, yeah.
35 each, so I think
Or
it's
30
around
each, yeah.
$70,000. We split it in half.
And it will be worth it if it helps us get through another budget without having to go to arbitration. Just to change the tone of the relationship that's been happening for the past few years. This past year was an exception, that we got through this budget the way we did, and my hope is that we can continue to work together, and this will help us find areas where we can, further cooperate and not run into the place where there's a need for arbitration. So that's the goal as far as I'm concerned.
Deputy Mayor Garish.
My take on the whole study, because of all the differences that occurred in the past, we're all looking to find a better way to spend our money, not just the city's money, the town's money. It's all our money. So if the result of this finds a better way or a more economical way, I believe that's the goal on both sides, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments on the highway analysis? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Sailfest food drive.
Would you mind just explaining what this is all about, please, to the council?
Absolutely.
Excuse me. Could I go back and ask one question on the first thing that we spoke about before we go forward?
The tax increment financing?
Yeah. You mentioned the enterprise zone. I was under the impression that we no longer were honoring the enterprise zones.
No, they're still in effect. What's happening is that the state's budget does not include a reimbursement, but we are still involved with enterprise zones at this point.
And my intent in addressing enterprise zones was this. We intentionally did not include electric boat because they have used that in the past. And when you're using tax increment financing, you can only use one, you can use this coupon or this coupon. You can't.
Yep. No, I understand that
Okay.
part. I just wondered where the funding would come from, but that's probably a debate for another day. Thank you.
Okay. Sailfest food drive. I think probably for everybody here, this is news. We were approached by Gemma Moran herself. She talked to me as the mayor. She talked to Robert Hayward of the Mashantucket tribe, and what we're trying to do is for the Sailfest set up a food drive. And basically what it is to give people, it's going to be one of the largest food drives that's ever been accomplished here if we're successful, and I think we will be. And what we're going to ask people is to bring non-perishable food items with them to Sailfest on July 14th. And when we were first invited, my question was, can we also reach out to New London? Because you have New London on the one side of the river, we're on the other side of the river. I thought it would be really good if there could be like a friendly rivalry between the Groton and New London and say, hey, we can collect more than you, and a little bit of boasting back and forth and maybe get the numbers up, because in the end, the Gemma Moran Food Center wins, and therefore everybody wins. And so what I have prepared here is, as the City of Groton is partnering with the United Way of Southeastern Connecticut, Gemma E. Moran United Way / Labor Food Center, Foxwoods Resort Casino in the City of New London, for a food drive during this year's Sailfest on July 14th. There will be trucks and volunteers to accept the non-perishable food donations at several locations in the city of Groton. In the near future, we'll start promotions on social media, websites, and radio. The sites that we have own in the city are at the Municipal building, which is here in this parking lot, at Eastern Point Beach, because a lot of people will go down there. And we have 3 different locations on Thames Street that we are scouting now and will determine what location we will pick to have the truck there. And basically what we will do then is we will create a map, and as part of the marketing we'll let people know, because one of the things that we did, and I worked with Chief Spellman to figure this out. He's been an instrumental part of this. As a matter of fact, he's taken over on this, because we know where the fireworks are, we know where the police set up their boundaries for no parking and those kind of things, where the entrance points are going to be. And then we try to identify where we could put we originally were going to put bins, and then very quickly we realized how problematic that might be. So now we're going to have trucks that will have the volume that we can accept the donations, and then close the trucks, drive off, and easy peasy, for lack of a better term, but it should be fairly simple. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I realize it's very high level. We're still having talks. We have talks once a week to nail this down a little bit. Chief, do you want to add anything?
Well, the 2 locations, we ran a toy drive, food drive, coat
Yeah, let's get Chief. Let's get you to a microphone.
Thank you. We ran a toy drive, a food drive, and a coat drive at Christmas time, and we were surprised how much food we collected. They came in and we ran out of space for toys. We were anticipating this to be successful. And as far as our friendly rivalry with London, rest assured, joint council, the red and black will overcome the green. So we're looking forward to having some success with that. Thank you.
Any questions or comments?
So then,
Mayor?
since all the locations are within the city, how can we as a council help? Can we help you staff the vehicles? Are you looking for publicity? What can we do to help make it successful?
Well, right now, at some point, there will be a volunteer drive, and we don't have a lot of information on that yet because we're still in the planning phase, but we'll need to have a volunteer drive. We're also going to do a media blitz where we cross advertise Foxwoods, the City of Groton, Jim and Moran Food Center, and New London, and we'll have some hashtags that'll go with that. We will be using social media's Facebook pages, websites. We're going to go on certain radio stations, get some airtime, get some public service announcements on there. If we're smart, and I think we are, we'll also use the local TV channel 2 and the other channels to advertise this. The idea, in order for this to be as successful as I think it can be, to help Gemma meet her goal, is just a massive marketing blitz to let people know, come to Sailfest, either side of the river. When you come down, bring a canned good for the food center. And let me go here, Councilor Depot.
Is there, not to be a killjoy, but are there going to be costs associated with it? Generally, when you advertise on the radio, there's costs associated, or is that something they'll be able to donate?
The Foxwoods is going to take the lead on that. We're going to see if we can get it for free. We're looking for low cost or no cost. No cost is my preference. But right now, I have not agreed to any cost to the city, or to, oh, I don't speak for the town anyway, but no cost has been obligated on us.
One more thing. I know that usually during the fireworks, they do that yelling match across the river.
They do.
So maybe the contest can be a part of that on the radio. They can announce who won. That would be kind of fun.
Well, and I'm not sure if, well, I think it's a great idea. I'm not sure if we will know then. They will have trucks, we will have trucks, and I'm not sure how they're gonna,
We could do little counters.
okay, go ahead, they may weigh the truck.
Usually what happens is we do food drives at Grasso all the time, and when you take the truck to Gemma Moran to unload, they put the pallet there, and then they actually weigh the pallets, and that's how they tabulate how much was donated. So we probably would not know that night unless you're just going by sheer number of trucks that you stuffed, you know. I don't know.
Yes, sir, Councilor Zafiri.
It's a joint meeting of the town of Groton and the city of Groton.
That is correct.
This appears to be predominantly a city project with all of the collection sites in the city. I think, you know, the fact is that there are a lot of people drawn to Mystic at the same time of year. A lot of people who are not that interested in Sailfest are still going to be walking through the streets of Mystic. And I think it would be a good idea to put some collection sites in Mystic as well as in the city of Groton. And there are probably other sites in Groton, in the town of Groton, where we could put some collection sites to make it convenient. I don't know whether or not the mall where Stop and Shop is will allow us to set up a collection site. But people go in there, and if they see you've got a collection site for the poor, and they're doing their grocery shopping, they might come out with a little extra and just dump it into your collection. I think also we should accept cash, which doesn't get weighed so well, but we should accept cash because the Moran Food Center can use that to buy the food they need. And it's a lot easier for some people to put out a few bucks than it is to carry several pounds of canned goods or whatever to the station.
Sure.
So I applaud you for what you're doing.
Hold on.
I applaud you for the initiative you've taken, and I only hope that we can help you make it a success and an even greater success than you hoped for.
Well, I will bring these back to the next meeting and see where they, see what they want to do. We'll go with Councilor Parker, and then we'll go to Councilor Carter.
I would have a concern about collecting money. Not that our volunteers wouldn't do it, but it could be a crazy time, and they're trying to take cans, and then they have to unless you have a specific lock box there to put the money in, and have it, or a drop box with a lock on it, and they can drop it in. I wouldn't just have it. It would be so busy that night. There's a lot of
just
people,
donate straight to them too as well.
They could, right, and just tell them where to donate it at. I just don't. That's just me.
Well, like I said, I will bring this back, and somebody in the group or at the Gemma Moran Food Center may have an opinion on it, or they may be more comfortable or uncomfortable with this. So, Councilor Carter?
Yeah. I just want to speak on the Sailfest. I mean, the Sailfest in general is a New London thing. I think we use that Saturday, the fireworks night, as it just happens to be that Groton City has the Thames River right there. But I think it is a Groton event, being from the town. And knowing people from the town, we know this is where we go on Saturday that day, So I think even though it is in the city, it's a town event,
Well, my commitment to you is that I will bring this back to the committee. I'm not dismissing it out of hand, because any idea is a good idea and deserves to be vetted.
I just wanted to tell you that my wife and I have had experience with this every year now for the last, I don't know, over 10 years, maybe 15 years. We've done what we call a turkey trot at Thanksgiving time, and we get friends and people in our church group, and we collect turkeys, and we all go out and everybody buys turkeys from the whatever store has a bargain on them, and we invariably bring about 55 turkeys or so, either to the Gemma Moran Center or to the Salvation Army. But there are a lot of people that show up and say, I forgot to get a turkey, can I give you some money? And they give you $15, and that's what a turkey costs for what we were buying for in those days. And it worked out very well, and we turned the money in, and they got some more turkeys, so we bought some more turkeys. It worked out. So it's really not that big a deal. And if you worry about somebody pilfering the money, that's a risk you take whenever you do anything like this.
Yep.
And for that matter, there are people who are going to steal the food and save on next week's grocery price. So I don't think that there's any big deal in there.
Well, and I understand your point is taken. Actually, a full debate of that here is not pointless, but isn't going to do us any good because the people that are going to make the decisions are not here. I understand your concern. Like I said, I wrote it down. I'm going to feed it back to the committee, and then they can decide whether they want to do it or not. And we'll just go from there. Councilor Franco?
Will you be collecting on just one day, or are you going to do it the week leading up?
Nope, I'm sorry, say again?
Is it the week leading up or just that one day?
That one day.
One day.
Sailfest day. That is the day that Jim wants to do it. Councilor Parker?
If it rains, will we do it the next day? Is that going to be the goal too?
Well, whenever the fireworks are, that's the intent is to tie the food drive to the fireworks event.
I just want to make sure when we're doing the advertising, we say it that way too, just in case. I know you know that. It's my thought process.
Got it. Rain dates, I have it now. Is there any other discussion on the Sailfest food drive? Councilor Atwater?
I just make the recommendation that you buy the heaviest cans of the smallest size.
Very good. Any other conversation or any other comments or questions or conversation on Sailfest food drive?
If people have ideas, they can just shoot you an email.
Absolutely.
With the ideas.
I am absolutely open to anything, and then I will forward it to the committee members. And we're in the beginning. I realize July 14th will be here sooner than we expect, but we're moving quickly, but we're still in the beginning stages. Okay, there is no executive session tonight. This is a placeholder that the city has that we use on our agendas in the event that something would come up. So with that, I will take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
We have a motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We're adjourned. Thank you very much.